like in Memphis, Shelby County.
Breaking tonight, a U.S. District Court judge has ordered documents related to the Fulton County election rage be unsealed by Tuesday evening. Fulton County filed a motion last week to make the documents public. Atlanta News First and other media outlets filed a similar motion. The judge is allowing the Department of Justice to redact non-government witnesses in these documents. It comes after FBI agents hauled off hundreds of ballot boxes in a raid January 28th tied to the 2020 election.
Politics now. President Trump used social media today to claim without any evidence that U.S. elections are, quote, rigged. There's also news tonight about the 2020 election. CBS's Willie James Enman is in West Palm Beach, Florida, near the president's home with the latest developments. Willie James, good evening.
Jerika, good evening to you. Today, a federal judge ruled Department of Justice records related to the recent seizure of 2020 election ballots and documents from Fulton County, Georgia, must be unsealed by Tuesday.
This raid at an election hub 11 days ago, sparking new criticism from Democrats as the Trump administration zeroes in on voting in America.
The whole thing stinks to high heaven. And the fact is, Donald Trump cannot get over the fact that he lost Georgia in 2020, that he lost the election in 2020.
Last week, officials in Georgia also asked a federal court to order the FBI to return ballots and documents that were seized. Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard's attendance at the raid, drawing questions from lawmakers.
I believe she has been totally inappropriate, showing up on a domestic criminal investigation in Georgia around voting machines.
The voting battle looms as President Trump has said he wants to take over elections from Democratic-run areas, with the November midterms on the horizon.
If a state can't run an election, I think the people behind me should do something about it.
The White House claims the president is referring to the SAVE Act. Today, in a post on Truth Social, the president once again claimed America's elections are rigged and stolen, while calling on Republicans to pass the legislation. CBS News election and law contributor David Becker.
We're seeing disinformation being spread, in this case by the President of the United States, targeted at his own supporters, at others who might not like the outcome of elections, and unfortunately some are believing it.
The bill would implement photo ID requirements when voting. Americans would also need to provide proof of citizenship when registering to vote. It's already illegal for non-citizens to cast ballots in federal elections.
Now, the Constitution gives states the power to carry out elections, but Congress can make laws regulating the process. The SAVE Act has already passed in the House, but it faces an uphill battle, Jerika, in the Senate.
Okay, let's get into this. I personally witnessed election fraud in Shelby County in the last 2 or 3 years. The election, let's say, November 2024, as a witness for a certain political candidate. I was at the Shelby County Election Commission, that's Memphis, and they were upset because in certain precincts they had higher vote counts than they had sign-ins by voters. What we're seeing right now is Trump was telling the truth in 2020, and Democrats don't want their perfidy revealed to the public. In other words, they've been lying about it and trying to conceal it. The point is that why are you upset with these voting counts, these ballots being seized? If they count them, are you saying that the feds are going to falsely change the count? Or are we going to find out what it actually was? And are we going to discover that you Democrats have been lying to us and that somebody else was telling us the truth? So you wanted us to join in a witch hunt to, put ourselves on the pole and get burnt at the stake, piloried, so to speak. So why is it that you even have the nerve to say you're opposed to voter ID? You need ID to buy whiskey to get drunk. You need ID to buy wine at a restaurant to enjoy dinner. You need ID to drive the car to go rob the bank or hold up the liquor store or go pick the kids up from college. You need ID to get on an airplane, which now must be backed up by a birth certificate, thanks to New York and California, et cetera, give it
The
illegal.
real ID. You need a real ID now to get
Yeah,
on the airport,
yeah.
airplane.
And then, yeah, real ID, thanks to California and New York giving driver's licenses to known illegals. You need ID to get in a concert, a ball game, a nightclub, a movies where the categorization is PG or R, let alone X-rated. You need, let's see, ID for a whole lot of things. So you need ID for these lesser things, from getting drunk to depositing your paycheck or getting it cashed. You mean something as fundamentally important as voting? You don't need an ID and all these other things that you would be doing if you decide to vote the damn couch and be a slacker and don't vote, and you sit your ass down with a lame excuse by politics is evil. All of these folk that want to sit on the couch need ID to get around in the United States of America as an adult. So you mean to tell me that they're going to need ID anyway? They can't get one to vote? That doesn't make any damn sense. That somebody would even utter that. Like that witch Kamala that got interviewed the other day trying to justify
What I see here.
why you should not have voter ID. That is so sickeningly, insultingly stupid.
Should I try to find that clip to play it?
If you find it, fine. But I mean, the bottom line is like, how in the hell are you going to say something as fundamentally important as voting doesn't require ID, but all this other stuff that is just surplusage does?
Right.
I mean, sir, driver's license, registration, and proof of insurance. All right, let me see your ID. You're in the grocery store and you decide to buy a couple of 6-packs of beer. ID, please. You're in a restaurant. You order a glass of wine. ID, please. You go into a movie. ID, please. You damn sure need some. There it is. There's that witch.
Wait a minute.
Mrs. Imhoff.
Is agreeing to voter ID one of those compromises that you'd support?
I don't think that we should underestimate what that could mean. Because in some people's mind, that means, well, you're going to have to Xerox or photocopy your ID to send it in to prove you are who you are. Well, there are a whole lot of people, especially people who live in rural communities, who don't, there's no Kinko's, there's no Office Max near them. People have to understand that when we're talking about voter ID laws, be clear about who you have in mind and what would be required of them to prove who they are. Of course, people have to prove who they are, but not in a way that makes it almost impossible for them to prove who they are.
God damn, the idea to run this ignoramus for president of the United States is astonishing. You don't Xerox damn photo ID stuff. You take it in and let the Department of Motor Vehicles look at it.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, what the devil are they talking about? People have ID anyway. Who are you talking about? Oh, look. If you didn't have ID, the freeways would be empty. The highways would be empty. You can't drive through a rural highway system without having a driver's license, because the state police, highway patrol, or the sheriff might pull you over. So you drive on dirt roads, but you have an ID. What is the matter with these people?
Swinging it back to Fulton County, the federal judge who ordered the documents related to the FBI seizure of the 2020 election ballots request for it to be unsealed by Tuesday, tomorrow. The order came down from Judge J.P. Boley of the Northern District of Georgia, an appointee by President Donald Trump. The raid of a Georgia election facility in Fulton County has come under intense scrutiny due to this connection to Trump's debunked claims of the election fraud in 2020. So
Who said that?
this is CNBC, of course.
God damn it. His claims have not been debunked except by a bunch of avaricious fascists who are lying to you. So don't use those terms and call yourself journalistic. The fact that you juxtapose, not you, but these idiots juxtapose those terms with their story shows they're totally unreliable. In other words, this would be part of what a jury would be instructed to look for in determining the credibility of a witness or witnesses.
Fulton County Board of Commissioners Chair Rob Pitts and the Fulton County Board of Registration and Elections are suing the federal government over the seizure of the ballots and seeking their return. And this is what the judge wrote. Although petitioners originally filed this case under seal, both parties have now indicated to the court that they do not oppose unsealing the docket or the motions filed by petitioners.
Let me translate legally in terms of evidence. The Democrats are not smart enough. They're too stupid to understand what they're agreeing to. This might be a Republican ploy to get a Republican appointed federal judge to order the records released so that right now they can get a slap in the face when they say, but I didn't know it was gonna. Yeah, you asked for it. Be careful what you ask for. You just might get it. And you might not like what you get. I have a sneaking suspicion that what's going to happen by their request for an early release is the feds are going to go in through the DOJ, through the FBI, which is part of the Department of Justice, and say, we haven't had a chance to redact these instruments because there's so many of them, so we're just going to have to give them to you as is. And unfortunately, that means the Democrats, by their demand.
Oh, someone is either they knock him off the gods or someone called him and he gets knocked off. I'm sorry, guys. Thank you guys so much for sending in the super chats. I am going to pull up and acknowledge each and every super chat and have the judge answer it or comment on your super chats as well as me. So guys, please hit the like button, thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up. Please share this video on all of your social media outlets. Shout out to everybody watching on X. Please repost on X. Here he goes. So what happened?
Yeah, I was getting ready to say the crucial point, which it is. It's a Democrat. It's an example of Democratic Party stupidity. They ask for something, they're going to get it. But what they don't realize is what they're going to get is going to be insufficiently redacted due to the time situation. It's going to embarrass some folk. It's going to be a lot of raw data that a lot of nerds are going to get their hands on. And they're going to say, oh my God, Trump was telling the truth. So they were stupid enough to ask for it. That's like in law, when you've got a trial going on, don't ask a question you don't know the answer to. And we saw their chief prosecutor in the area, Miss Fanny, get up and do all kinds of stupid stuff that said she didn't know what her case was about. She went and violated her own Fifth Amendment considerations, and she implicated herself in a bunch of people and opened up a big can of real nasty worms. So
let me say this about her. She is the cause of all this drama that is going on in Fulton County, because had she not opened her knees during probably the most high profile case that would have been in her whole career, probably in the whole history, one of the high profile cases in the history of cases here in the United States, had she not opened up her knees to Nathan Wade, he probably would not be president. She probably could have got a conviction. Who knows? So all of this drama in Fulton County is because of her. And so my question is, why hasn't anybody in Fulton County demanded her resignation? The people haven't.
They probably have, but they aren't being. Somebody has. We have L.A. Pink and some other people that are on all the time
No,
that are doing
LA,
this,
yeah, LA, but see, and I said to
but
this, I
they're
said,
not publishing
LA
it.
Pink, wait, right, but LA Pink should not, LA Pink and her organization and her crew of people should not be the only ones. It should be at least 30% of Atlanta residents should be complaining and asking for this woman resignation. And I'm talking
I've
about
heard
people.
a lot of people there who have. See, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I've heard a lot of people who have.
Okay, so they're being ignored. Can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. You said they're being
Okay.
ignored, but you said
Right.
something in there. You were being silent. I couldn't hear you.
It's probably a 10-second delay or something. But
I just think it's for the interference so people don't hear this, you see. It's being said, but the press is keeping it tamped down. The sources of information are suppressing what a lot of people are saying, and they're giving you a lie that nobody's in. Oh, yes, they are. You hear it all the time out in the streets. So where is that? We don't hear about that.
I want to go here. Let's go to California, honey, because this is major. So, Small Business Administration, the SBA, suspends 111,000 California borrowers suspected of $8.6 billion fraud. Let me play this clip.
Spends what now?
The SBA suspends over 100,000 California borrowers suspected of
they made
$8.6
loans.
billion fraud.
They borrowed money. Okay.
Right. So the 100,000 borrowers, 100,000 people who borrowed from the SBA, they are
Small
suspected.
Business Association, yeah.
They are suspected of an $8.6 billion fraud. So let me play this clip.
See, this goes up, and people at the top get a little feedback.
Let me play this clip.
Table.
I'm here in San Diego, standing at an address that is registered to 14 businesses that took $2 million in pandemic-era loans. Those loans haven't been paid back, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. Today, the SBA is announcing we're suspending 112,000 California borrowers who took potentially upwards of $9 billion. We're going to continue to work with our federal partners to ensure accountability for COVID-era fraud that the Biden administration tried to sweep under the rug. And just like Minnesota, California is another state whose socialist welfare policies have invited fraud. Well, the buck stops here. We're not looking the other way. We're prosecuting. There's going to be more to come.
And they need to look into what they are trying to do to former residents who bailed on the damn place. Where they're still attaching bank accounts and funds, et cetera, trying to tax those funds when the people are not legal residents or not illegal, but have not been residents of California for a considerable amount of time. So somebody needs to look into their general fraudulent activities.
Let me play this.
First reported by CBS News, sources say Vice President J.D. Vance will lead a new White House anti-fraud task force that will search, it is said, for welfare abuses in California and other states. Arweja Jang joins us now from the White House. California and other states, not random, I'm guessing, probably run by Democrats.
Well, Major, that is a good educated guess, considering that is what the president has been very vocal about in recent months, especially as he talked about setting up this anti-fraud task force and appointing a new person at the DOJ to oversee all of these new investigations, Major. And you're right, there will be a heavy focus on California, as our colleagues reported today exclusively. And we know, as you mentioned, that the vice president will be the the chair. But there are still few details about exactly how this task force will operate. There are already concerns, though, Major, because there are existing departments within the DOJ that are already tasked with looking at fraud. And so the distinction will be important because critics worry that this is going to be politically motivated, given the vice president's involvement and given what the president has said about these Democratic states. But we expect more details and for the actual task force to be formed sometime this month.
Not hard to do the political math. J.D. Vance might be someone seeking the presidency in 2028. So might Gavin Newsom, the governor of California. That math pretty easy to do. I want to ask you about Iran because the president had an interesting exchange with NBC.
Okay, we don't need to hear about Iran, but let me, it's another clip that I wanted to play here.
Mr. Speaker, people across the country are rightly outraged by the fraud that has been discovered in the state of Minnesota. But for those of us in California, we have almost become desensitized to it. Because every time there has been an independent audit, it seems, of any program in California, what is discovered is fraud on a scale that dwarfs anything that was discovered in Minnesota. We've already taken some action here in Congress to rein in the fraud that exists in California and to provide oversight and accountability that has been sorely lacking. But what is needed is a comprehensive picture of just how large the scale of this fraud might be. That is why I am requesting that the Government Accountability Office conduct a study on the scale of fraud in California.
I've been talking a lot about this. Unfortunately, sadly, the state that I love and I live and I represent a district from California has become a fraud capital of the world. So sad. But that's why we need your team in California. And is there anything that you can share to that end, how your investigation into California fraud is proceeding?
There's nothing I can share right now, but I have spoken to Dr. Mehmet Oz at HHS, and he is laser focused on the healthcare fraud that's going on in California, which seems to be substantial.
Yes, I also sent a letter to Gavin Newsom to that end, and I was glad to see Dr. Oz sending a letter demanding. So now state of California is now in the process of returning $1.6 billion to the federal government. So thank you for that, and I look forward to continue to work with you.
This is a Fox News alert. Saturday in America continuing to track
That's
fraud
breaking up,
allegations
by
all
the
across
way.
the country.
When you edit that, that was very garbled. I know what she said, but that's because I've heard it before.
Okay.
We've seen it in Maine. We brought you some questions about some funding that allegedly was misused in Maine. Those were private donations. Then California. And now, here's the next state, Massachusetts. Now, the state's auditor just released a report revealing massive fraud within programs like Mass Health, the Department of Transitional Assistance, and the Department of Early Education and Care. These are all programs that provide social services to the Massachusetts community. And as you can see, there was over $4 million in fraud uncovered in the state's SNAP program alone. Another $1.3 million connected to the state's Mass Health program and hundreds of thousands of dollars found in other state programs. We're also learning of 22 civil recoveries that reclaimed nearly $800,000 in fraudulent overpayments. Now, the total amount of fraud in fiscal year 2025 alone was nearly $12 million. That's in 1 year. That's your money. Now, as all this fraud is being exposed, President Trump is reportedly planning to sign an executive order establishing a new fraud task force. Signaling its importance, it will be led by Vice President J.D. Vance. And joining me now to react to all of this is House.
All right. So
Okay, it's been going on everywhere. There's blue. They're sticking it to you. Memphis, Shelby County, Tennessee is rife with corruption. Atlanta is rife with corruption. Where you get a black controlled or heavy influence on a state level, you're going to find corruption. Fortunately for most states, the black control entities are just the focal points where it all comes together because they're the easiest to commit this kind of fraud in. This child care fraud was rife in Memphis, Shelby County, Tennessee, a couple of decades ago. It's probably come back. We find there's massive fraud with the Board of Education, where there are federal monies. There's massive fraud because the people who are elected and appoint the officials and the appointed officials, they're easily able to steal the money or get kickbacks under the table. So it's rife and it's bad.
So let me just close out with this California fraud, because we're going to stay on top of this and keep doing, more content on the fraud. The fraud involves, this is California, Paycheck Protection Program, the PPP, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program. The PPP, established under the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, provided funds to small businesses to cover up to 8 weeks of employee payroll expenses, including the benefits. The COVID-19 pandemic EIDL loans provided funds to help small businesses to cover from the pandemic. And so you had over 118,000 PPP and EIDL loans totaling $8.6 billion. So, I can't even begin to start, like, where was the oversight on all of this?
It went. See, it's like both sides, Republican and Democrat, have something to do with the horrible conditions in California right now. But it's an example of be careful what you ask for. You just might get it, and what goes around comes around. What you pass for the benefit of your side under American laws and our system has a distinct probability of being used against you a couple of decades downstream in time.
All right. So, but here's the question, because it seems like the Trump administration, they're going after all the blue states. But if you're going after fraud, it should be across the board. And I'm pretty sure red states or red districts have been committing fraud as well.
But you see, the difference between the red and the blue situation?
What?
It's like this. It's like somebody goes out and commits a crime. He commits the crime. He either gets away with it or doesn't. The other guy goes out and commits the crime, but in the process of committing the crime, he simultaneously tries to frame somebody else for the crime. So you've got the victim of the crime and you've got the poor sap who's getting framed. You have two victims. So what you do is a matter of economy in this. You go after the person that's making two victims by every crime they do. The victim of the crime immediately and the scapegoat. So the Democrats have been using lawfare to tamp down the, shall we say, just and accurate claims that something's going wrong. That's what you call tampering with the evidence, influencing or attempting to interfere with witnesses or an investigation, or bribing a witness or extorting a witness, you see. So that's why he's focusing on it. And as I've said before, this country needs this country is constipated. It needs an enema and a laxative, and the person that gives it is going to cause some unpleasant results as a reaction.